Welcome to the Heartpicker Podcast, a place where we don't pick brains, but hearts. We listen to each other's stories in order to grow, heal, and connect. This is a bilingual podcast, so you will see that I have episodes in both English and Spanish. I take turns between each every week. Today, episode 19, we'll be talking to a lady called Annik. She's a Canadian spiritual yogi, traveler, intuitive businesswoman. We talk about our personal experiences being workaholics and addicted to productivity. Very related to my last episode if you haven't heard it yet. Just a side note, I recorded this around September of last year when I had quit my online teaching job and was already starting to feel some effects of a burnout coming. So you'll be listening to me talking about that period of my life. She also shares how she decided to move abroad and take her business remote, and what her experience was with traveling as a Canadian who didn't feel like she quite belonged where she grew up. She also shares with us her perspective on media, the government, and COVID-19, which is quite interesting actually. I hope you enjoy and see you in the next one. Even if I sleep 8 hours in the morning, I'll be slow and not unless there's something going on that day, I won't be energetic. Like something especially exciting.
Like
Or
something that
yeah,
launches you out of your bed and you're like, yes, I'm
exactly.
so excited.
Yeah, and then like a trip or anything like that where I have to be on my toes. But otherwise, I'm
Yes.
not. And I was telling my mom how I feel weird not working because I haven't had a lot of this is weird, and I'm out of a routine. And I'm, of course, at nighttime, I'm just energetic. I go to bed late and I wake up late, and then I don't know. So I was telling my mom that, and she was like, well, you've been working your ass off the last 2 years. Just enjoy this time to sleep in, And there's a part of me
Yes.
that feels guilty, no, I should be
Yeah.
getting up early, even if I don't have a job. I should be waking up early, and so now it's been it's funny how the moment I've been working on accepting that and accepting rest and not beating myself up. Um, and I feel more energetic now and rested because of that. It's like maybe I took away that. Maybe I was consuming energy from feeling guilty, from feeling
Yes.
bad, from not wanting to
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
we go through phases, and this will probably come up other times that we talk today, but when I say like masculine and feminine, I'm not talking about gender. I'm talking about like every person has feminine and masculine energies. And so there's like a flow of your life. There's times where you're in a masculine phase and there's times that you're in a feminine phase. And so if what you were just saying, like if you were supposed to naturally be in a feminine phase, which is the collecting, the gathering, the listening to your intuition, the resting, the nurturing, if you were like supposed to be in that phase, like your body was like, and your mind, like your whole being was like in that phase, but you were fighting it. You're like, no, I need to like do action and this, and like that's the masculine phase. It's like when you try to like fight the natural phase you're in, you're not gonna get past that phase. Like it's gonna just feel like, when you're in let's say you have like lots of things to do, lots of action steps to do, and sometimes it's just so easy. You're like bang bang bang, I'm like getting all this shit done. And other times you're like, what the fuck, I feel like I'm punching myself through a wall. Like there's no door to walk into the next room, I'm just like punching myself through. It just feels like you can't get there. It's because you shouldn't be in that action phase. You should be in more of like a gathering phase. So the more you fight it, then you're not getting the benefits from that phase. And I feel like you just don't get shit done really at
Exactly.
all. And then
Yeah.
I feel a lot of shame and guilt too, because it's like, you feel like, why can't I do this? Like,
Well, and we take pride with being busy. Like I was so proud of saying, "Yeah, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I meditate, and then I work from 6 to 9 a.m. doing classes, and then I work on my podcast, and then I edit it, and then I work out, and then, and I felt so proud of that. And then I could feel myself getting tired, getting exhausted, and like messing up and not being motivated, and just like not caring, and that scared me. So I thought, okay, it's been 4 months like since quarantine started where I've been working nonstop. I'm going to take a break. And now it's like
hmm
learning to, it's so uncomfortable for me to
hmm
take that break. And then finding the balance, because I can't just not like, but this is why I'm doing these calls, the podcast calls. Like they
hmm
really make me feel good. So I can't just like not do anything for the
Yeah.
podcast. But it helps me to not have to publish. You know what I mean? Just like
Yes.
gather calls, gather recordings, and then worry about editing with
Later.
ease.
Yeah, and what came to my mind when you were saying what your routine was, like that sounds like a beautiful routine, but if let's say you were still teaching um, that English class from 6 to 9, and then you find yourself in a feminine energy phase, it's not about like ditching, obviously your job. It's not about like ditching your job and ditching your podcast, but it's like, okay, tonight, instead of editing, if it's not due yet, I'm gonna do some creative work
Mm-hmm.
because that's nice and flowing, and then more podcast ideas can come to you. So like,
Exactly.
if you like journaling or creating like art, whatever medium, like those types of things, because then you're still doing stuff, you know um,
Exactly.
or not.
Exactly.
You could also just be like, tonight I'm going to meditate, or tonight I'm going to do nothing, or tonight I'm going to have fun, or tonight, because we
Yes.
also, that's the thing, like with type A people, you're always like, okay, I have to do, it's like what you just said, like you feel guilty not accomplishing a certain amount of things per day or per week or
Yeah,
whatever. And
totally.
so, yeah, and so if you, but like if you don't allow yourself to play and rest and do those super important things, you're not going to be as efficient with your
Exactly.
action steps.
Do you
Mm-hmm.
ever do you ever feel like what you've done during the day is like not enough? Like you have to
Yeah, all the
remind
time.
yourself like you have to I have
Like
to
every day.
yeah,
Every
dude, like I
day.
have to sometimes make a list and remind myself like this is enough, and like give me myself a pep talk. Like you have
Yeah,
accomplished a lot today. Don't worry. I'll go to bed thinking, "No,
yeah,
I didn't do this and I didn't do that and fuck." And like I have to remind myself of what I did do.
yeah.
Mm.
I use Google Calendar as my like everything. And once, like 5 years ago, a healer said to me, like, can you show me your to-do list? Because I think it's pretty unrealistic. And then one of my homework steps was like, make every task like a way bigger bubble. Even if it takes an hour, make it 4 hours in your calendar, so that, because there's always random daily shit that pops up that you need to deal with through work or just through life or just whatever. So if you pack your work schedule like minute to minute, and then at the end of the day you're like, oh, I didn't do these things, like, but you did three huge things that took 8 hours, but yet you feel like, oh, I fucking suck, I didn't do all these other things.
Oh my god. Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
but
so
yeah, I'm
tough.
learning. It's hard, like it's something that we learn as children. Sometimes we learn it from our parents, sometimes it's like in our ancestral lineage, so it goes like way back. Sometimes it's through trauma. Yeah, like there's, that shit's deep, so you can't just overnight say, okay, you're putting too much on your plate, like
Yeah.
let's stop doing that, the end. Like obviously it's not that easy, right? But yeah, like what you said, you have to remind yourself that yes, I am enough. Give myself a pat on the back. I am doing a great job. And even if some days you should plan not to do anything productive and to just go with it and be like, wow, what a special day that was, you know, but it's hard when you have so much guilt about
Exactly.
being like, if you're a workaholic or a type A person, you're it's like a practice. You have to practice allowing yourself to be that way again, like when we were children and playful and we didn't have all these weird complexes, you know.
I know, especially like people here in Venezuela and like my family and people my age here, I find that like they don't have this problem. And I don't know where I get my own problem from. And like bringing your child, like in South American culture, I don't know if you saw that in Nicaragua, but people have their inner child very activated. Like they love drinking, dancing, going to the beach. Like they're not
Mm-hmm.
feeling guilty for having a good time here. And like my mom's the one always reminding me to like just chill, enjoy
Play.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
play. Yeah, like don't worry, because she's always hearing me complain like, ah, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, or I didn't get up early. And yeah, like you've called yourself a workaholic. Why? Where do you think that came from?
uh like being a workaholic, or me realizing that I'm a workaholic?
Mm, maybe both things.
Okay, so realizing, I didn't realize it while I was in it, which is funny because it's like you can compare it to any substance abuse or any addiction. Often people don't know that they're addicted to something until later, or until they're ready to stop being addicted to it, or until they've already just naturally stopped doing the thing, and then they look back and they're like, what the fuck, like what the fuck was the last 10 years, like what, or something. But yeah, when I look back at the early stages of my business, like before I had a storefront, I was just like working 3 jobs to save all the money to one day open a store. And like, then when I opened the store, I was like, oh my God, I fucking have a store. I have to pay commercial rent, which is thousands of dollars per month. Like, how am I going to do that? And there was just this huge weight on my shoulder. And it was like kind of like lighting a fire under my ass. Like, you better fucking work from when you wake up till you go to bed. Otherwise, how are you're not going to be able to pay this and keep this alive, you know. And so it was like, it's not healthy, it's not at all healthy. And I've come a long way to not be this way anymore, but it's still a work in progress. But yeah, I would literally wake up, be in panic, not panic mode, but fight or flight mode, like always. From when I woke up to went to bed, it was always like, renovate this, do these appointments, do all this admin work, do that work, do these things, and then go to bed. You know, it was like no time to live a life.
You had a boyfriend though, right? Like when I met you, I'm pretty sure you had a boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have time for that relationship, or like how did you manage that?
So having a relationship as a workaholic was, well, in the time that I was describing, when I would like wake up, work, and then go to bed, that I did not have a partner. But and I also think I was like a workaholic for a long time to avoid, and this is why people use substances or have other addictions as well. It's like you're using that thing to avoid something, to avoid usually being alone and sitting with your thoughts and your emotions and processing traumas and shitty things that have happened to you, and processing emotions that you don't want to process. So people often will, you know, they'll just like party 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 to like never be alone, or they'll like jump from one relationship to the next so they're never alone, or they'll um, be workaholics like me. And I feel like for a long time in my life I was avoiding doing a lot of work on some past issues. Um, and then maybe did that start, like it was pretty soon after I opened my shop that I like hit rock bottom with like, oh my God, this is not sustainable, like what the fuck. And yeah, I just started making it necessary. I'm like, okay, I need to do an hour a day of like meditation, writing, um, resting, doing some like just pencil it in, you know. I was, and then it was
Being.
funny, yeah, being, but it's funny because then it's like a type A person turns even that into like a productivity thing. Like, oh, did you do your meditation today? Did you do your, oh,
I
it's
know.
ridiculous.
I know. And then you beat yourself up if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, like even that, I'm like, okay, even if it's 5-minute meditation, just do it. Because sometimes I'll be like, if I don't have a full hour or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, there's no point to it. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't meditate today. But let me go
Okay.
back.
Intro.
You were born in
Okay.
Toronto.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. We're just already
It's
deep
all
in.
good.
Okay. Listeners are
Who
like,
are
whoa,
these
whoa, wait,
people?
wait. Who is this?
We both
Yeah,
have
yeah.
ADD. Warning to the listeners.
You were born in
See,
Toronto.
born in Toronto, and then grew up there till I was 19. And then I knew since I was like 14 that I didn't belong there. And when I was 19, I was like, I'm going to move to Australia for a year and figure it out and just start traveling. And I was there for a year, went to New Zealand while I was there, and then came back to Toronto for a wedding, and then was like, yeah, I still don't want to be here. Like, no, like that's so. I'm not saying that in any way, like, ew, Toronto. I don't think that at all. I think Toronto is like an awesome city, and I have such amazing friendships in Toronto still. But I just, when you just know something is not for you, like you're like, I'm not meant for here. I just
Oh, yeah.
knew. I've always been an intuitive person, and I like knew. I was like, I'm not gonna live here. Like, where will I live? Like, where am I supposed to go? So anyway, and then where did I go after that? I went to Vancouver for 6 months, loved it. And then went to California for 2 months, loved it. I basically loved everywhere I went, so I'll stop saying loved it to everything. And then I moved to Europe for 6 months. I was based in Barcelona. And if anyone listening's ever been to Europe, it's like so awesome because everything's so close together, and there's these cheap ass flights for like 50 bucks. You can fly to a whole other country. You're like, what? So I went to a few places when I was based there. And this whole thing was like a 4 year of travel. I was basically working and then in some places not working because I didn't have a visa or wasn't, I don't know. But mostly it was like working and traveling. And the whole goal of it was like, okay, I want to travel around and figure out where I belong and where I want to like open a business and ground myself and set up and the end, like just like and then I was like, yeah, it just, as it happens in all aspects of life, like things become more clear as you go. I was like, okay, I'm gonna live in Vancouver because it's the warmest place in Canada, and I am going, but it's still not warm enough for me. But I'm gonna build up a business um, to a point where I can physically not be there anymore, and my roles will be like done remotely. And and then I want to live in like Mexico or Central America, or not sure yet, but I wanted to live in a warm climate all year round and near the ocean where there are waves that I can surf. And so like that was always a knowing as well. Like I remember like a friend of mine, Frances Ashley, the other day was like, or like the other, I always say that, the other day when it was like a year ago, um, she was like, oh, I remember like 12 years ago, you were like, I'm gonna like move to Mexico and teach Pilates on the beach, and that's where I'm gonna live if this doesn't work out. So that was like my plan B. My plan B, if my business didn't work out, I was like, okay, I'm gonna teach like Pilates and yoga on the beach, and that doesn't sound like a bad plan either. So, yeah, I don't even remember if I answered your question right now.
Yeah, you totally did. So it's funny how it was just like an intuitive knowing from a young age, even though you were born and raised there, and like
Yes,
I
all
don't
my
know, it's
friends
just
were there.
I find it uncommon for someone to not have exposure and yet have that intuitive feeling before having the
Yeah,
exposure. You know what I
yeah,
mean? and following that, because it's also, I think it takes a lot of
Yeah.
courage to follow that. Like, I wish I would have done that at 19. You
Yeah.
know, I'm still trying to, and then it's so cool that you started your business with still that goal in your mind. It wasn't like a spontaneous desire out of nowhere. Like, you said, I'm gonna start a business, and eventually I will
Move
take
somewhere
off
warmer.
and like work remotely. So it's so cool. Like, you did that when you were 25 in one of the most expensive cities of Canada. Like, how
Oh
was
my
that?
gosh. It's like depressing thinking about that.
Like, that's so young.
Yeah, so
I can't imagine starting my own business now, like in Vancouver, and I'm 26. I'm about to be 27, and I find
ooh,
I find that
Saturn
terrifying.
return.
Like, yeah, how did you do that?
um, well, let's see. Oh, first, should I talk about what my business is? Maybe people are like, what the hell is her business? Okay.
Totally.
So it's called the Pussy Shop, and pussy is spelt with an X, not a U, because I found out quickly that I wasn't allowed to write that word anywhere, like on major sites and stuff. So it was a huge challenge for like the branding of the store. But yeah, it's a store. It's in Vancouver, Canada, um, and we have like self-care services, so skincare, waxing. We're known as Vancouver's best Brazilian wax. Um, we have infrared sauna, a yoga studio, meditation drop-in, Reiki services, tarot services. We have like a witchy store at the front that we carry like divination tools, healing tools, awakening consciousness stuff. So yeah, it's kind of like a divine feminine shop. But again, when I say feminine, it's not about a gender. It's like that yin energy of like healing, softness, listening, intuition, nurturing, that side of us. So yeah, so it's kind of, there's a whole lot going on there, but I like to sum it up in one little blurb of like, it's like a wellness for inside and out, or wellness for like body and spirit. And for like the self-care services, we're really not like a normal place that offers that stuff. We're not like doing our marketing like, hey, you have to come get waxed or get this anti-aging shit, like you need to look this way. And it's really not about that. It's quite the opposite. We're trying to like destigmatize bodies and allow people to feel comfortable of with any age, size, gender, ethnicity, anything. So yeah, we're like, everybody that comes into our little shop is like, wow, this is really not like normal, like in a good way. They're like, this place is rad. So yeah, it's I guess the way it evolved into being all those things is like, I'm certified as like an esthetician, yoga teacher, Pilates teacher, group fitness teacher. Like, I've done it all along the years. Did holistic sports nutrition, so I have a big passion for like wellness and superfoods and eating clean. And I read tarot. I'm a master level Reiki practitioner. And so I just wanted like a place where I could, yeah, like have all these wonderful things in one roof, where people can learn and grow. And if they're not into that, sometimes they're just like, they see crystals or books on the shelves and they're like, oh, like cool. And for a lot of people, it's like the initiation. I don't like that word initiation, because it's not like we're like forcing them into it, but it's literally just there. And a lot of people just stumble upon a lot of these tools, and they're just like, oh, I'm really called to buy this book. And then they do, and then it just opens up the whole can of worms of like, holy shit, like I just started my spiritual awakening. And that's the fucking best thing to hear, because I'm like, that's beautiful. Like, fuck yes. So
Just by having like objects present,
yes, yes.
right? Rather than like, and how did your spiritual
Well,
awakening being, or your journey with spirituality?
my spiritual path came in chunks. um when I was 15, I don't know what, like when I was at that age, like I had no idea that this was that, but I like stopped eating animals. I like stopped eating processed sugar. I stopped watching TV. I said hell no to the news. I was like, what is this fucking vibe? Like, this is fucking bullshit. And not to say that I was just ignorant to things happening in the world, but the news specifically, I was like, this is not where to get information from. I know that right now. But
So where do you get information from?
um,
How do you stay aware of what's going on in the world?
well, at that time, this is a long time ago, it was through friends, or if I hear, because that's when I was a teenager, my parents would tell me. Um, and the internet was not, there was no social media back then. There was no, and no, I'm not saying social media is where you should get your information, but now it's like I'm deeply connected with my intuition now, and I know I just have sometimes clear cognizance with things where it's just like a knowing. You just like all of a sudden you're like, I know this. And then from that knowing, I'll be like, okay, well, what's on the news right now is the opposite of my knowing. So I'm gonna look somewhere and try to figure out what's the deal here. And for example, with COVID, the fucking second that this fear started, I was like, guys, like I posted it on my Instagram, like, guys, like, don't fall for it. It's fear. Like, they're trying to control us and blah, blah. And I had no idea. Like, factually, I was just like, I know this, like, somehow. And then I started looking for information. And right away, when that shame wave started of, oh, you can have this virus, and if you go out and you're 6 feet or closer to someone and you guys aren't wearing masks, you can spread it to someone, and then they're going to spread it to their grandparents or to an autoimmune, like a vulnerable immune person.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like a yeah, vulnerable group of people.
And yeah, I was like, that's interesting, because from my research on the actual, and this is what shocks me, I'm like, the CDC is where they're all getting their well, they're saying they're getting the news is saying, oh, this is from the CDC, this is from the CDC. So the CDC is on that side, but I feel like the news, they're allowed to say whatever they want on the news, because it's not factual, and it's owned by people in power, and they pay them to say whatever they want that will support something that they have up their sleeve. And I've known this since I was a teenager as well. Like, I grew up with punk rock, and they're very political, and they're very like, fuck the government, fuck this, like, fuck that. So I've just learned to like question everything. And yeah, basically, at that time when that shaming was starting, because this was right when everybody was just kind of like not taking it seriously. Everyone was like, haha, toilet paper, blah, like just making memes about like things, and like nobody was really taking it seriously. And then, well, not no
Yeah.
one, but like the people I knew weren't. And then I was like on the CDC, and I screenshotted this mid-March, and it said, this virus is not likely to be able this virus is not likely contagious unless the carrier is symptomatic. So that's the exact opposite of telling everyone, hey, hide your kids, hide your wife, like fucking lock yourself in your house, and don't fucking go anywhere. And if you do, you best be wearing a mask, because you're going to kill all these innocent, like elderly and immunocompromised people if you don't do your part. Like, save the world, like, do your part. And they just like started this shame, because they were saying you could have it and not know, and it's contagious anyways, but it's not. And it's still not. That information I just said was on the CD. I checked like every month. I was like, are they going to take this down? Because it completely opposes that whole fact that's making everyone like freak out and listen and stay home and wear masks and do all the things. The other thing that's interesting is that if you literally look at the numbers of people dying, they're less than pneumonia, and they're less than everything, and they're like 0.04% is the mortality rate. And so how is it that the whole world is on lockdown because of that. It's not about a virus. And third thing, that's my biggest point of smelling this fishiness, is like, the government never fucking gave a shit about us, okay? And the people at power, even less. They are fucked, and all this other shit's coming out. Yes, there's a bunch of pedophiles and doing crazy satanic cult shit, like, it's disgusting. And these are the people in power, and they are getting ready to do some other big shit. And this pandemic is step one of, okay, how do we get everyone in fear so that they're not logically, critically thinking, so that they listen, conform, and then we're going to take all these rights away to get them to beg for a vaccine, which we own, and then we make all this profit of, and the big pharmaceutical companies that we work with, they do too. And also there's a huge, like, vaccines that are dangerous currently, they get tested for 5 to 50, and now you're telling me there's a vaccine developed for 5 months that's gonna just roll out? Like, that's fucked.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. But what about like the time span? Because COVID has spread like in a shorter amount of time. You know what I mean? Like the speed of like how it spread and got people sick,
Because it's
and the amount of
a new
deaths.
virus, so nobody has antibodies for it. So of course, like, anyone, so let's say there was a new cold, which this basically is, and you're like, oh, I've never had this before, and it's gonna spread because nobody's cleaning their hands, people are touching their face. I'm like, is this serious? Like, I'm a germaphobe, so I was like, how are people not washing their hands and don't touch your face? Like, that should just be going on in your life. But if you look on Statistics Canada website, it's there, right there in the open. It shows deaths total. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my dog. He's like grunting and grunting at the door. He wants to come out. Okay.
Not at all.
So it's very cute. It says on Stats Canada, like, the total amount of deaths from every kind of death, from January to July of all the years from 2015 till 2020. So you can compare all the deaths from this year and the months that correlate to where the pandemic was, like, at the heights and everything, compared to like all the deaths last year for the last 5 years, right? There's no spike higher this year. So how the fuck is the whole globe on lockdown about a virus that has a 0.04 mortality rate, and the total amount of deaths in Canada haven't climbed, and like, there's something fucked up there, you know? So it's like, no, I'm not a scientist. No, I don't know everything, but there's some shit going on, and it's just like, I wish people would question things and not just be like, oh, the news told me this, and a scientist on the news and a doctor that I saw on the news said this, so this is legit. It's like, no, guess what? All the people on the news are paid to say whatever the people that are owning it want them to say. So it's like, yeah, sometimes, not just sometimes, many times there can be true things on the news, and many times there can be false things on the news, but it all depends on the best interest of the people who own the news. Like, what do they want us to know? That's what we hear. So it's really been upsetting to watch people be like, yeah, I'm very science-based, I'm very facts-based, so like, yeah, COVID, wear a mask. And I'm like, okay, first of all, a mask, like, if you're sick, stay home, because of what we were just talking about, the contagiousness of something new. Yeah, if you're sick, stay home. The virus is not spreadable, the virus is not contagious when you're asymptomatic. So if you have symptoms, stay home. Well, other than that, wash your hands, don't sneeze on people, don't touch your face, and we'd be good. Like, no need to shut anything down. Like, do those 4 things. Like, literally, fuck. Like, that's how I feel.
Like any other virus or disease that's contagious,
yes.
pretty
and
much.
They don't even have like official ways to detect COVID when they're pronouncing these deaths as COVID deaths. So they're pronouncing pneumonia and influenza deaths as COVID deaths. It's fucked. And that shit is that's a fact. It's like you can read it on CDC, you can read like interviews of the what are they called, the health officials of different states. They're like, yes, well, we have to presume some of these deaths and this is how we do it. So it's like, okay, so what's the fucking death percentage? Like, ugh, it's so frustrating. It's very frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think it's amazing, like the amount of lessons that it's teaching everybody
Mm-hmm.
in different ways. But it is frustrating because you don't have the control anymore. Like you can't control
Mm.
anything. How are you keeping sane though within all those frustrations?
Well, it's like, I guess I've understood that so right now is also that if you look into astrology and the way that our planet is going right now, it's these times of, there's like a great awakening happening, and you probably, everyone's noticed with various friends around them lately, like more people are waking up to, oh, like the mass produced meat industry is harming animals, the planet, my body, making us sick. And then we need pharmaceutical drugs to stay alive. And guess who profits off that? So I don't know. I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that the system is faulty, and they're starting to do, a lot of people are starting to like grow their own produce and uh, just buy from small businesses and local, supporting local stuff. And that's beautiful because people are starting to understand the impact of a lot of this shit. And like, look who made the most money during quarantine, like Amazon, Bill Gates. There was like 9 billionaires that made like $40 million more, or I don't know what, some crazy amounts of money more.
Well, yeah, it's crushing all of the small
Yes. Yeah.
businesses big
Yeah.
time. And like and all of us normal
Yeah.
people, like even for me, it's like and for
Yeah.
everybody, especially the third world
Mm-hmm.
countries. Like here in Venezuela, the economy was already bad as it was, and now it's a lot worse. And it's like survival of the
And all the one
fittest right now.
percenters have more money. So one of
Oh
the
yeah.
arguments of my friends who um, is like, yeah, pandemic. I don't even know what to call that side, but um, what were we just saying? Oh, she's like, but why would they want to destroy the economy? Like they love the economy, and I'm like, okay, they're not destroying their money. They're destroying the middle class. That's what they're doing.
Others,
They're like, let's
yeah.
fuck that middle class and let's make more money. Everybody stay home, order from Amazon. Let's let these tiny businesses not be able to pay rent, and then they'll close down, and then everybody has to go to Whole Foods and buy their vitamins and whatever. So yeah, it's fucked up.
Well, let's move
Yeah,
away from the COVID
let's not
issue.
talk about this. I guess the other day when
Let's go back to
you're like, yeah, I might ask you your opinion on COVID. I was like, oh, you want to go there?
I
Like,
like that
oh,
might be a whole different
it's
show.
heated.
Let's leave it off with like some a conclusion, and that is just look for your own information and question stuff more.
Yeah, like if everyone just question everything, because the hand that feeds you your news, unfortunately, is not your pal. He's not your pal. He's fucking evil as shit. And you need to question everything and do more research, and don't get triggered when you find something, but like process it, like deal with it. It's fucking ugly, but
Exactly.
it's there's a lot of evil forces and we can't fight that. Like we're more people than them. So if everyone together is like, we're not standing for this shit anymore, like that ends that. But this is, our society is not ready for that yet, because so many people are like, I need authority, I need this hand that feeds me the news, I need, so I need this safety.
Right.
So yeah, I think if everyone just tries to experiment with some more research and see where it goes, go down the rabbit hole, as they say, you know.
I'm going to make the question again. I'm wondering how it was for a 25-year-old to start a business and all the challenges that come with that in Vancouver.
So I studied business at a university in Montreal for, well, I was going to do the degree because I've always, like, I'm from a family where like getting a degree is like what you need to do. And so I was like, well, I want a degree in something and I want to open a business. So I just tried to like merge those two things together, which was a mistake. And then my first semester, I was like, this is lame, like super fucking lame. Like everybody here wants to like climb the corporate ladder and like work for Starbucks corporations and I don't know, pharmaceutical like just everybody wanted to like be in that corporate shit. And I was like, what the fuck is this? Where am I? Everybody, like, I don't understand people. And then I found this course that was a certificate in business, and I switched to it after the first semester, and it was way better for what I wanted. It was full of people that were like myself, like more creative, and they just wanted a like foundation of business because they wanted to start their own businesses. So yeah, it was way better. And so I did some of that certificate via like online. Well, back then it was called correspondence courses, where like they would like mail you your books and you would uh, write an exam at like a university of wherever you were. So I wrote one of my exams in Spain, in Barcelona. They like talk to the faculty to have someone like watching you during an exam so that you're not cheating, and then you like that faculty like mails your exam back to the thing. And anyways, yeah, that was interesting. But so in Vancouver, when I was opening my business at 25, it was like I feel like my answer, it's not going to be inspirational, it's just like depressing because I was a complete workaholic. I would barely see any friends. Like sometimes I'd go out and people were like, oh, you still live in Vancouver? Like I haven't seen you in forever. And like
Okay.
yeah, it was really fucked up. And like I mentioned earlier, it was like fear that was um pushing me, you know. It wasn't from a good place. It was, well, it was I had good intentions, obviously. Like it was coming from a good place of like I want to build an amazing place where people feel great and the staff feel great and clients, everyone's like, you know, build this great community. So in that way, yes, it was from a good place. But what was like igniting my, you know, 15-hour work days was fear of failing. And honestly, at that, I don't know if I would have, if my business would still be standing if I didn't sacrifice so much, you know. And I like lived in my shop for the first 6 years because I couldn't afford to pay rent there and rent anywhere else. And that in itself, like, you always hear these things that saying like, if you work from home, like, you know, it's really hard to separate your life and your work and have balance because you're just always working. And that's completely true. And I feel like a lot of people during lockdowns, when people from offices had to start working from home, I feel like people got like a real taste of my life. It's like working from home now by myself, and it's fucking hard. It's really hard. It takes a lot of discipline. You need to like get used to it. You need to have boundaries with yourself. And then there's all these like little tips and tricks, like, oh, don't work in your bedroom, for example, because psychologically, like, that's supposed to not be for that, you know. Anyways, yeah, it was interesting, like witnessing a lot of people talking about their struggles during working from home. And I was like, oh fuck, story of my life. Like, yeah, it's fucking, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Exactly. And like you were mentioning how and I mentioned, wow, you seem to be living the dream life. And I'm looking at your Instagram and I love, your picture surfing and, and you're living abroad and you have your own business and traveling.
living in these beach places, and you mentioned how, well, that's a trigger for me, the fact that like a lot of people say that I'm living the dream life when really I'm in a computer all day working, I forget how many hours a week, and it can, and I'm used to people and I miss
Yeah.
people. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So basically, it's like when people see like, okay, she's Canadian and now she lives in Mexico, and when people think of from Canada, when they think about Mexico, they reminisce about, oh yeah, I went to Mexico before. I went for this like holiday where they, lay on the beach all day. They drink margaritas. They socialize. They meet all these people. They like party. It's like that's, they rest. They're not working. There's no stress. It's like a holiday. It is a holiday, right? So they associate a tropical place as they think I'm on holiday forever. Like, oh, how does it feel? Do you even work? Like, what? And it's like, of course I work. I work full time. I'm just, I've just chosen to move to a different country because I get anxiety when I'm cold, and I just thrive when I'm like in way too hot climate. Like, I love it. And I've always known that. And I'm like, I need to figure out how I can live here all the time. And so, yeah, I have a job, I work full time, and my life is the same. Like, I work, I surf as my daily exercise, and time with nature. And, I walk my dog, I do groceries, I do laundry. I like, it's just so funny because people think of a vacation and they wonder like, how are you there all the time? And I'm like, well, this is my home. I do normal home things. And yeah, it's interesting. And I mean, I'm not trying to dumb it down and say I hate my life at all. I'm just saying I love my life, but it's a normal life. I have my boyfriend here, I have friends here. um yeah, it's amazing, but it's like, it's funny how people glorify certain things on Instagram, and then they think like, well, how can I have that life? And it's like, well, you do have that life. Do you want to be in 40-degree heat every day all year? And then they might be like, no. And then I'll be like, okay, well then maybe you should just make a plan for like the 3 coldest months in Canada, if that's the months you don't like go somewhere hot, and like save your money and just live off it. Or do something online for 3 months, or sell some art, or I have no idea. There's tons of things you can do. You just have to think what you want to do, what's for you, not follow somebody else's thing that works for them. And it's like, I have a friend who teaches yoga part-time, and she works at a corporate job Monday to Friday, and she's in Canada. And she asked me this question like a year ago, and she's like, oh, I want to move to Bali, like that's my dream, I want to live there and like just teach yoga, and that's the end. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you want that, go do it. What's stopping you? But the thing people don't think about is, to do that, you have to leave where you are, which means leave your friends, leave your family if they're near, leave your things, leave your corporate job that has benefits, like leave your whole comfort zone. And if that other thing, if you want it so bad because it's in your knowing, if it's something that's like, oh, I've known from a young age that, or like, I went to Bali for a month and it was just like, wow, like I was alive. Like, if it's something that resonates for your soul, you'll make it happen. And if it's something that's just like, you went to Bali for 3 weeks and you're like, oh yeah, that was a great vacation, best vacation ever. If you can't picture like being there all year, like maybe it's not that you want to live there. It's just you like that like glorified idea of like a nonstop vacation. So if that's the case, you have to think, okay, well, what in my life, what is it that I don't like? What do I need to change? Because maybe it's not a location change, but maybe it's something else. Maybe while you're on vacation, you're like writing more or doing something creative more, and it's making you like really let go of stress and making you live all these beautiful synchronicities and just putting you in this beautiful flow where all these things go your way, and like, you know, meeting like all these amazing connections and people. And so it's like, if that's the thing of vacationing, you know, maybe that's the thing. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna bring like a writing practice into my life, or I have no idea, you know, it's different for everybody. But I just feel like this digital nomad thing, because you brought that word up and you're like, do you identify with that? And I was like, no, because a nomad is like walking around and moving, and my goal isn't to like move around and travel. I mean, obviously I'm always gonna like travel a couple times a year or whatnot, but I want a home base. That's what I'm doing. It's just like, I'm just a person from one country who moved to a different country because it's what my soul knew it wanted from forever ago. And so I made it happen, you know. And the way that I got there wasn't very healthy because of my workaholism back then. But then it brought me into this very dark place, which ignited like the second chunk of my spiritual awakening, which was like, when you're at a really dark time, or if something happens to you, or I don't know, it's different for everybody. But I believe that when you're brought to a dark time is when you're forced to start looking at, okay, well, what is life? What am I? Who am I? What do I want? Like, what is this, you know, what is this soul purpose? What is, yeah. So it's just like not looking at a 3D life anymore, not looking at, this is my body, this is my house, these are my things, you know, like looking more deeply. And yeah, so that brought me to just, I also thought I was getting, and this is funny, I don't want to sound like a hypochondriac, those people that think there's always something wrong with them, like medically. But I, at one point during my dark time of like super workaholic, while I was the first few years of my business, I was like, I went to a healer, and he's actually a physiotherapist, but he's very intuitive. And then we just always started talking about that kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, I feel like, I know this sounds crazy, but I feel like if I didn't start working on myself and healing, like, what the fuck is this workaholic shit? What was I trying to have a band-aid over, right? I was like, I felt like if I didn't start healing things or taking care of me, that I was gonna get cancer. And he's like I said, in a way, like not statistically, or not just like reading someone's story and being like, oh, I don't want that to happen to me. It wasn't like that. It was like, I felt it coming on. It was fucked up. And I told him that, yeah. And I was like, it sounds fucking crazy. And he's like, if you felt that the way you describe it, it's probably true. And I was like, wow. So yeah, I was like, I need to do something or else I'm gonna just die. Like, I need to fucking change something. This is not working out for me. And then yeah, it was like a heavy focus of um actually wellness. You know, like I've always been into wellness, but it was like we were talking about before, it was like, it was just one more to do on the list of like, did you do these things for your health today? And like, so yeah.
Okay. So what, yeah, I was going to ask, like, what steps did you take towards getting out of that workaholic
I
mode?
started understanding, like it started with like body work. I was like, okay, you need, like I was getting all these back pains, and a lot of stresses and emotional problems will manifest in your body. So there's a really great book called Your Body's Telling You to Love Yourself by, I forget her name. Maybe it's Louise Hay.
I'll look it
Louise
up.
Hay writes one similar, it's someone else, it's not Louise Hay, but Louise Hay does have one called Heal Yourself, which is similar concept. But the other one, the first title I said, is like a dictionary, like big ass book. Um, and it,
Your body is trying to
your
love?
body is telling you to love yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
And the woman's last name is like a French sounding name. Um,
Okay.
but Yeah, it's basically the relation between metaphysical stuff uh, expressing itself in physical form. So it's like, let's say uh, your right hip is hurting, or you have a problem with like your low back or your upper back or whatever. It all represents things that can be going on in your life. So for an example, like upper back problems is always what I have, and that's putting too much on your plate and like kind of feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders is like a really great metaphor for it, because it's right there on your shoulders. Or if like your neck, you have neck problems, it's like it could be someone is burdening you, um, or someone's not allowing you to be yourself. And that it also correlates to the chakra system, because your throat chakra is right there in your neck, and that's like when you have an imbalance with that, it's you're not expressing yourself as you want to, or maybe so yeah, I always would get strep throat when I was near my family all throughout high school and in my 20s. And I was like, oh yeah, it's because I feel like I can't be myself in front of them, so I would always get sick in that exact way, like throat. Wow. Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, so I would go and get body work, like physiotherapy, acupuncture. And then that physiotherapist that I met that was an intuitive, I started getting homework from him. Like he'd be like, okay, this is your home. He would give me like, okay, write a letter to like your 14-year-old self about this trauma thing that happened, and right, and so I would cry every session, not from pain from physiotherapy, like from like emotional healing. And yeah, so I started then just doing a lot of research on my own on YouTube with certain spiritual teachers. Like Gigi Young is an amazing person that helped me at the beginning there. And I still watch her content. She's fucking rad. And yeah, just doing more of my yogic practices like breath work, meditation, and any form of movement. Journaling, I've always been a journaler, like since I was literally 6 years old, because like one of my grandparents, I think, gave me like this diary when I was 6 for Christmas, and then I was like, dear diary, like I still have every single journal from my whole life, so it's really funny to read the shit that you write when you're 6. But yeah, journaling's a really great exercise to do for multiple benefits. Like if you journal every morning as soon as you wake up, and you can either decide, if you had a dream that you remember, you can journal about your dream, or there's this technique called what's it called? Morning pages. Have you heard of morning pages?
Yeah, and I do them. I've been doing them for a while.
And how do you feel when you do them? Like, helps you get the out?
It's funny because I have to find the thoughts, because like I said, I'm not a morning person. So unless I have something going on, like usually in the morning, I'm kind of not thinking about anything yet, and but I sit down and something will come out. In the nighttime, I write more. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like just today, I said, dude, I felt okay, and I was still like, dude, even if you feel okay, write about how you feel okay. Like, write about the good things, write about that conversation you had that was super good. Because sometimes when I'm neutral, I won't write. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I'm fine. I'll mostly write when I'm feeling bad. So the morning pages forces you to write, even if it feels silly and it's like very neutral, and like there's nothing really going on, but there's always something. And I always write down my dreams. Mm-hmm. And then when I look back, like just my last Instagram post was something I wrote in April that I was like, whoa, I'm feeling that right now. And how cool it was for me to like just look up it was in April, like just a few months ago, and see what I was feeling then. And so you recognize like your cycles. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and it's so cool. And like now if I write down, whoa, I'm taking a rest before, like I could feel myself getting to a burnout. I'm going to take a rest from everything and reestablish a bunch of stuff in my life and rethink a bunch of
Yeah,
stuff.
like what's
But
important.
I do, yeah, but then I learned like, wait, but I do need some structure. I do need some sort of activities. Like I do need it, to feel like I am advancing in something every day. Like even if it's just one thing, like doing an interview in the week, like one interview a week. Um, so then like probably in 6 months, once I start feeling that need for a rest again, I've learned that about myself, but it'll probably be because I read what I wrote. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's why morning pages are so I do it with meditation.
Awesome. You meditate and
Yeah.
then you like journal what comes up.
Or or I write and then
Mm,
meditate, or I write, meditate, write,
mm,
like whatever. Yeah, because sometimes when meditating something comes
mm-hmm.
up, I would try to write like the gratitude. I just wrote a blog post that I haven't published yet about like the 3 things I do when I'm feeling yucky. And I recognized like, wow, this actually is making me feel better. And I'm gonna write about it so that someone else can try it and see. And it's just like, it's so simple. It's just 1, meditate or pray. No, yeah, 1, meditate, 2, write about what I'm feeling, and 3, pray or manifest. And like, so if I want to cry, just like cry it out, blah blah blah, then write about what I'm feeling and meditate, and then like actually pray and manifest and think about what I do want in my life, or and that those 3 things really help me.
That's awesome.
And they don't take that much
No,
time.
that's awesome.
How is it for you? How long have you been doing morning pages for?
Morning pages is like, it's not a daily practice for me. I find I can get too OCD with like all the things I want to do every day. And so it just, when I feel like, okay, I'm doing morning pages for 10 days in a row, it's like a thing. And then it comes and goes. But I usually do it for like a 10-day period so that I can see some benefit from it. But yeah, I'll just like wake up, write. And from like my understanding of like how I read about this exercise, it's not like what you're writing. It's like, yeah, like sometimes like just the normal writer in me wants to like write things from what I'm thinking, but the morning pages that I read about were like, not just like write shit, like just be like, if you have nothing to say, nothing's coming to your mind, just be like, nothing's coming to mind, nothing's coming to mind. And I was like, what? That's ridiculous. But the exercise in it is that they say, you get all this shit out and then you'll have random breakthroughs coming out. And so, yeah, I do find after a while with that, it does happen, but it's not like the first time you try it, it's gonna feel really redundant. You're like, what the hell am I doing? Like writing this bullshit.
So what tips and tricks do you have for working at home?
Yeah, I think having a distinguished area is important, which I don't follow suit from. Like we just moved August 1st to a different home, and we're kind of just like testing out all the nooks and rooms and spots for things. So I'm sure it'll come. But yeah, having
Yeah.
a designated place for work. um I think having a schedule, even though I don't need to have a schedule, I think having a schedule is really important, and having boundaries, because I work from home, so I don't physically go anywhere. Like it's not like I'm like, okay, see you later, I'm going to work now, like bye. It's like I'm here, and like it's just me having boundaries with myself of saying like, these are the days and times that I have to dedicate to work. Um otherwise, if you're otherwise it would just, if there was nothing like that, it would just turn into like me surfing every single day and partying, and sounds like a lot of fun, but like then I wouldn't be financially able to stay here. So I think it has to be like it sounds so cliche, it's all balance. It has to be a balance. Like you have to work hard and play
Yeah.
hard and rest. So yeah.
And it's like finding your own balance, which is the toughest
Mm-hmm.
actually to understand. Like, it's like being okay with being off balance for a bit until you finally find it, and you change, and like your life changes, your environment changes,
You have
so
to roll with
obviously
it.
that what made, yeah, like what gave you, what was like a balance, even for me, like what was a balance for me a few months ago now isn't. Now I have to reestablish everything, and for that I need to be okay with being a bit off balance, or like feeling that. And because it's easy to like get frustrated,
Right.
I get
Well,
frustrated when
maybe
I'm off
not
balance.
looking at it
And
like you're in
now,
balance, but acknowledging like, okay, I was so productive in like yang energy, and now I have to, not have to, but like now I'm embodying more yin energy, and I'm resting and I'm processing and I'm listening so that I can get these
exactly.
passionate ideas so that my next masculine phase, not gender, my next yang phase, I'm going to be like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to go, you know? Like you were saying, like when we opened the call, you were like, yeah,
Exactly.
I feel like, yes, I'm ready, you know, because you listened and you chilled for a bit, and now
Yeah.
you're like ready to go. So instead, so when people feeling imbalanced, maybe they need to like be like, okay, if I'm trying to work too much, maybe I should chill a little bit. Or if they're trying to be too lazy, or if they're feeling like
Totally.
depressed and like they're just not doing anything and they're feeling imbalanced from that, then they're like, maybe you should find a new hobby or start just putting your heart into something
Exactly.
and making it every day, like just trying to create, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. And I had another question. So how, like, what have you learned from living in a different culture than your own as a Canadian, like in Nicaragua, um, in Mexico? I think you went to Costa Rica as well. What have you learned about these other cultures? Like, how has that changed you?
Hmm. This question could go so many different ways. Like, let me think. Um, well, my Spanish is getting pretty good. um, but yeah, now
Yes.
podemos hablar en español. Yeah, I
Yay.
think I was trying to speak Spanish to you when I waxed you sometimes. I was like, let me
I remember.
practice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember. I
That
remember.
was another thing
Yeah,
that,
you
yeah,
were
like
so
my
into it.
soul being like, I've known since high school that I was like, I need to know Spanish. Like that's a thing that's gonna be a part of me one day. Like I knew, I don't know how. I was just like, I'm, yeah, this is in me. I don't know. It was weird, but I feel like it's not necessarily like those cultures that have changed me. Um, because I also had that 4 year experience when I was 19 of traveling. But I feel it's more like when you're, maybe I'll talk about my 4 years traveling when I was 19, because that was when I was exposed first. Like I was fresh to this travel thing. And I was like, I really, first of all, I learned to be grateful for everything my mother did for our household. Like, because that when I was 19, that was when I was like, okay, bye. I'm leaving not only the nest, but I'm like, leaving the country, leaving this hemisphere. Like I'm out. I'm going as far as I can. Um, but it made me really grateful because I was like, wow, like moms do, and not just to be stereotypical to moms, because obviously there's a lot of dads that have this role in the family. So like there, and sometimes it's shared. Sometimes it's like, but oftentimes it's like one parent that works a lot, and then the other parent that does all the like household stuff and like books everyone's dentist appointments and like doctors drives you the your gymnastics thing and your basketball tournaments. And you know, literally I'm like, how do parents do that? Like fucking superheroes. They're just, you know, and I have one sister, so there's two of us. They're driving her here, me there, and it's literally every night of the week we had activities and shit. Like I'm just like, wow, so grateful. Anyways, and but yeah, most importantly, what changed in me was like I felt like when a person removes themselves from their comfort zone. So for me, like I had a really tight group of friends in Toronto, and when I say I didn't, I was like in Mississauga. It's a suburb of Toronto, but I just say Toronto because like everybody knows where that is. But I had a super tight group of friends, and it like literally broke my heart to leave, but I just had this calling that I had to. And later on in life, everyone else kind of went their own way eventually, and that's just how life goes, right? But anyways, when you come out of your comfort zone, you kind of light up, and you just find yourself in all these random good coincidences, like synchronistic shit just happens to you everywhere. And I was just like, wow, life is crazy good. Like, I love this country. And I would think, oh, I love this country. But then I realized it's not that country. It's not Australia, you know? I mean, yes, it's a great country, but it's not, that was just like what popped my, you know, travel cherry. I was like, that's what, it just changes your whole perspective on life. You just like, you understand that literally the world is your oyster. You understand you can literally live anywhere you want. You just have to think creatively on financially how you can make that happen, and emotionally how you can make that happen, and logistically. But it's different for everyone. So it's like when people are looking on Instagram at like, oh, this life, like I want that life. It's like, do you want that life, or what do you really want? Like, what is it that appeals to you in this life? Like, you want to be warm, you want to surf, or you want to teach yoga, or you want to just ditch your life because you don't like it and do something completely different, or you want to like meet new people. But it's like, you can do that, you can embody these traits in your own country. And that's what it really taught me, and it woke me up. Like, you can create your life, you can create whatever you want if you listen to what it is that you actually want, instead of trying to think because of society telling you, oh, this is the way it goes, you need to get a job and then put a down payment on a condo and then move to the burbs and then have a kid and then, like, get married, have, you know, like, so it's like, do you want that? If you do, that's amazing. My sister wanted that and has that, and great. But like, if you don't want that, if that doesn't resonate with your whole being, and you just think you're supposed to do those things, or on the opposite spectrum, like if you just look at Instagram and say, oh, I want these things, but if you don't really want them, you're not going to get there because it's not meant for you. If you want something, like, you'll make it happen, you know? If you want something, or if you're not sure if you want something, that's okay too. You can go test drive it, right? Just be like, oh, I'm going to go to Southeast Asia for 3 months or 1 month or 3 weeks or whatever. And while you're there, just like visualize, like, okay, do I want to be here for 12 months? If so, what do I need to, yeah, you just make it happen. And you know, and if you're like, oh, maybe 6 months, and then it's like, okay, well, then in 6 months you go to whatever job is going to earn you the money to be able to stay at that place for 6 months, or I don't know, because yeah, I just feel like it's always possible. And I didn't come from a family with money, and when you come from a family with no money, like, you also inherit beliefs and all this ancestral like, I'm not getting the word right now. I was thinking of saying all these like ancestral limiting beliefs that you're like, I need to work, like, money is hard. It's hard to have money. I have to work hard all the time. And then even then I'm not successful. Success is hard. Success is impossible. Like, all these things that I inherited from my dad's side that I've been working on dismantling, is like, that shit's deep, right? But trust me, like, everything is possible. If you want it, you make it happen, you know? So it's just about like,
And you said something key about like in identifying those limiting beliefs and seeing them as limiting beliefs instead of
yeah,
reality.
instead of like, this
And
is how it is, the end.
yeah, because I identified with that, or I related to that, because like what I got from my dad was, you can't make money from your passion.
Mm.
You know, like so I wanted to study psychology, and he's like, yeah, but you're not going to get jobs with that. Study this. Yeah, but I'm a photographer, and I want to be a documentary photographer. Yeah, but you're not going to make money. So like my whole life I was sort of like, and that's what I mean with that teaching job that I had. That was always like my way of accepting I can't make money off of what I really love, so I'm going to teach English and this is perfect. And I was happy for 2 years. But then I had sort of like I was just not happy. Like waking up as early, I wasn't happy with the job, and I was like thinking, wow, do I really want to, like, is it time for me to start moving forward and dismantling that
Yeah.
belief so that I can
Well,
make money from something that I love?
what
And
I
like,
also got is like, because you were saying to me you want to travel and you want to do like journalism in different countries everywhere, and but you need to like figure out how to make that work financially. So like I always think it's really smart and sustainable for people if they have like on one hand they have a job that makes them money, and on the other hand they have what they want to do passionately and creatively and whatever. It's like it's not one or the other at the beginning, you know. It's like for you teaching 3 hours, even though it's early, um, you can go anywhere. You could go
yeah,
live in
totally, because I can do it
yes, you could
remotely.
live in whatever country you want and wake up at whatever time zone. You could just, I mean, it's obviously inconvenient if that time is 3 a.m. in a different country, but if you were on the other hemisphere, it'd be like 4
Yeah,
p.m. So I don't know. I think
yeah,
I think it would
exactly.
be a great starting point as an example of like, yeah, it's in your mind. It's like limiting beliefs telling you like you can't go have that life, because you fully can have that job again, teach 3 hours a day at whatever time that time is, and then you set 3 hours a day for your passion, and then eventually when you're like living with your purpose, you're shining so bright that like you're like magnetic to people, and you're going to attract like whatever clients or whatever agencies to pick up your stories, or whatever. I don't know much about that industry, but when you're living with like in alignment, um, you're gonna do really well. And it's just a matter of like figuring out creatively, like, okay, how logistically can I make this happen? Because I know deep within my soul that it's what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly.
Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week for our solo episode. Next week will be in Spanish, and the week after that as well. If you're just an English speaker, I will see you in a couple of weeks.